Welcome, friends, members of Fierce Leader Facebook group. Exceptionally today, I have a little friend with us. Hey, baby. The youngest one. Yeah, very cuddly. I come here to you live, and I apologize for the voice, to engage a conversation around responsibility and victimization. Yeah, big topic, right? I've been reflecting a lot and know that if it's a topic that you feel is gonna be useful to someone you know, invite them to watch that video. Get them into the group, get them into the movement of becoming the fierce leader. I was reflecting a lot what responsibility means, because when I moved to US and I quit my job, the whole dynamic changed, and it changed how I perceived responsibility. It changed how I perceive responsibility as someone being single, living on its own, as someone being married and living in a shared house, and someone then buying a house. And it changed responsibility. The meaning of responsibility changed over time in the past 5 years, and it changed even more in my profession, because if I take on the identity of becoming a peacemaker, becoming the person that can guide others, where is my responsibility in that? And so for a very long time, I was struggling with taking on the responsibility of helping people to find a solution, because I thought I'm responsible, I'm the mediator, I'm the one that has to help them to fix it. But then the fine line was very wobbly between being responsible to create the space for them to find a solution and the taking on the responsibility to find a solution for them. And so part of the growth professionally for me was to really draw a very firm line on what is my responsibility as a professional mediator and consultant or guide, or where do I draw the line? And so I realized that my responsibility is not for my client to find a solution, but my responsibility is to create the space and to guide them to where they can go from there. What I came to realize by contemplating a lot what responsibility means and its relationship to victimization is that very often, if we feel responsible about something and that thing doesn't work out or fails or doesn't succeed, then we feel the painful disappointment or the shame. And to avoid feeling those emotions, then we reject the responsibility. And so I feel that very often when we tell ourselves a story, the basic of I can't do something, we're putting our self-limitation on something we could do, but we choose that we can't, rather than finding a way to be able that we can do it. And I feel when we observe society at a larger scale, you see that victimization a lot. And what is a very good question to ask is, when people stay in the victimization, what do they receive for it in counterpart? And in my contemplation, what I realize is that people receive care, they receive attention. When you look at the big titles in newspapers, it's what you see. It's people victimizing themselves. They're going to receive the attention. They may seek for justice by staying as a victim. And truth is, I believe that justice actually is just the hope for justice that they're seeking. It's a hope. But it's not necessarily true that they get the justice as staying as a victim. What So what I came to see is that staying as a victim kind of protects us to confront our own responsibility in what we experience. And by saying that, I call on your open mind and open heart, because I'm not saying someone who experienced a very hard situation, a trauma, looked for it. It's not what I'm saying at all. The responsibility here I'm talking about is the responsibility of what we feel, of what we think, the belief we hold, the boundaries we set, what we tolerate, what we accept. All this is our responsibility. What we are willing to negotiate for, what behavior we adopt for ourselves, and what behavior we tolerate in others, the habits we hold onto, and all this, we have the responsibility for all this. You are the only one responsible to set a boundary. You are the only one responsible to say yes, to say no, to accept certain behavior or not. And so we are responsible for all of this, and to avoid taking the responsibility, to avoid feeling the pain of having chosen the wrong partner, the wrong job, the having mistaken an information, having believed in something and realizing we were wrong, and to avoid the pain of being disappointed, being shameful and being angry, to avoid those feelings, we kind of protect ourselves by kind of rejecting unconsciously all those responsibility. Because if we take on responsibility and despite that we still feel disappointed, we still see we did the wrong move, or we chose the wrong person, or then who are we? What identity do we have? And so we might take on the villain identity, but we can't, because it's our life. We have to be the good person, the hero. And so what I realize is that we choose by default to be the victim because we can't be the villain. And it's where the Karman triangle is very fascinating, is that someone that stays in a victim state for a very long time, at some point you usually observe a shift from victim to persecutor, because someone being in a victim state is going to compound anger, and compounded anger over time kind of blows up. And by blowing, this anger creates persecutor. So because we usually have something to seek for by staying a victim, we stay the victim. We tell ourselves the stories, and by victim I'm not necessarily talking about physical injuries, harassment, assault, something like that. I'm talking about the stories we tell ourselves, like, what, I can't do this because I'm too old, I can't do that because I have a health condition, I can't do that because I don't have the money, I can't do that because this happened to me in the past and I don't trust people anymore. And all the stories we identify with that today limits or the course of our actions and keeps us in the cage of victimization. And so the very interesting thing to look for you is to see if you observe yourself telling yourself you can't because XYZ, or I experienced this so I can't XYZ, or I don't have the money so I can't XYZ. So if you tell yourself this kind of story, it's not about they're true or not, it's not about that, it's about they're limiting you at some point. But what you get to retain the stories and to accept being limited, what you get from it responds to something you seek. And the question that you can look at is, what are you seeking when you actually rather stay limited somewhere in a little bubble than trying, getting out, taking the risk? And so what I contemplated is, people usually seek for compassion, attention, care, they seek for love, they seek for belonging. And so because they would find this, then they confuse compassion with love. So when someone comes to you, you tell their story, you tell your story, and someone comes to you and say, I'm so sorry you experienced that. Oh, poor you, that's so hard. That's entertaining the victim status, and by saying that, you may receive the compassion and the support, but you're confusing compassion and support for love and belonging. It's not the same thing. Some people want just a validation. And so when someone says something like, poor you, it must have been so hard, that's very hard, that's gonna be a long way to heal from that, and they give you the validation that yes, you're legitimate to have the pain, and that's hard, and that's intentionally not the bad thing. They care, they show you their empathy and their support. However, their validation entertains the victim status as well, and that kind of validation may also feed the behavior of wanting to save everybody. And some people, just because they don't want to face who they are, they want to save the world. And so when you're able to observe that, to place yourself in metacognition and look into the Karman triangle, the drama triangle, and see if a behavior is such a savior behavior, rescuer behavior, or persecutor behavior, or victim behavior, then you can choose to get out of that triangle and move on and be more empowered. But many people confuse validation for belonging. And so very often, and what I see in today's society very strongly, is that when someone validate a behavior, validate a cause, they give the feeling of belonging to someone else. But validation and belonging is not the same thing at all. It's not because someone validates you that you belong. It's not because someone validates you that you belong. What you validate, the intention by validating, is important. So if someone validates your victimization story and makes you believe you belong, then your belonging is based on victimization. So when you seek validation, if any, it's your own. And because you validate yourself, you own your truth, you own who you are, then you belong anyway. Because people are going to resonate with your own truth. Everybody has its own truth, so we must accept differences, we must accept and tolerate. However, different truths are going to resonate with each other. And so, when you are your own validation, other people who resonates with your own truth are going to resonate with you. I think that's I invite you to re-listen to all what I've just said. It's an entanglement of a lot of things, of victimization with validation, with compassion and love, and search for belonging. And there is a lot in like those 10-15 minutes. There is a lot that you need to re-listen and see. When you re-listen it, can you hear it on a different plan, if it makes sense? Can you hear it in a different way that you're going to understand it a little different than the first time? And if you watch it a third time, different than the second time, and so on. But something I've been contemplating on, and I'm not finished to contemplate on that. I think more videos are gonna come about that, about validation and self-authority and victimization. But it can quite open your eyes a lot when you start to see that a lot of validation, a lot of victimization comes in very sneaky places, in the sneakiest way possible. Because we think about victimization as, oh, that person experienced a certain situation, a trauma, or a very hard, difficult situation, so that's a victim of that. But victimization is every time you say I can't because XYZ. Oh, I wish I could, but I can't XYZ. There is your story. So that's what I wanted to share. I'm going to set up a lot of different possibilities to join the clarity call. I want to put a payment plan possible. And I'm thinking about a very affordable masterclass. I want to create something all around emotions because I feel it's a very difficult block. And even when I see either personally or with private clients or even professionally with colleagues, mediators, and coworkers, handling high emotions is still hard. It's still difficult. And despite the training we receive, despite the classes, the workshops, everything we get, all the quality training we received, handling high emotions in other people is very hard. And a lot of it has also to do with how I allow myself to feel high emotion, intense emotion, and how am I able to navigate those emotions and to stay grounded. So I really want to put something together about that, and that will be like very affordable. I want it to be out there in the world to whoever needs a quick refresh on dealing with high emotions. So I'll prepare that. I want to think a little more about what I want to say in that, but I think it's gonna be ready by this fall. And other than that, newsletter is coming up very very soon. Like we're already mid of June, and so I need to write it. So it's coming up soon. And if you have any comments, any questions about all what I said in that video, just let me know. You can email me, you can leave a comment, you can DM me on Instagram. There's different ways you can reach out to me. So I hope this was helpful, and I talk to you very soon. Bye.